Good morning, everyone. Our today's topic is story writing. Story writing is one of the parts of composition. What is story writing? A story is basically a narrating of real or imaginary events involving real or imaginary people. A story does not need to be represented in words necessarily. Even images or moving pictures, that is, movies, can narrate a story. A story is generally designed to entertain, and or send a message across. There are stories that contain morals, there are stories that are just for entertainment purposes. So there are different types of stories as well. Elements of a story. Now these are the main things, main parts, main characteristics of a story. So you need to understand them before proceeding to write a story. Characters. These are the beings who inhabit our stories. Sometimes they are actual people, but just as often they are animals, dragons, fairies, or even objects. Consider the spoon, dish, and clock from Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Remember that story? There is a movie on this story as well. The characters of this movie is spoon, a dish, and a clock. These are also the characters of the movie. Characters are necessary. Without the characters, you cannot write the story. The next part is settings. Setting is where your story takes place. Setting also includes season and time of the day. For example, summer, 5 p.m., climate, that is cold or mild, era means the time period, the 70s, the World War II. All these things fall under the category of settings. Then comes theme. Theme refers to the big ideas that bubble up from what you have written. Is your story about love, friendship, justice, family, honor, or violence? You may have a theme in mind when you start writing your story. For example, if it's a funny story, so it has to be funny throughout. Or if it is a story of violence, so it should remain on track of violence. Then comes plot. Plot is what happens in the story, the series of events that this happened, then this happened, then this happened. This is just for your explanation. Don't use then and then again in the story. Now, coming to the structure of the story. The story has three main parts, that is, the beginning, the middle, and the end. What comes in beginning? You start the story by introducing the main characters and their goals, the setting, and the main conflict. The mood and the tone are set at the beginning and should be consistent throughout the story. It is written, says that in beginning you have to introduce the main characters, their settings and conflict, but it does not mean that you will write my character name is Ali, the setting is house. No. For example, in the cold night, a boy was walking alone on the deserted road looking for his parents. Now, in this sentence, cold night is the time when it is taking place, boy is the character, deserted road is also the setting, it's the place where it is taking place, and looking for his parents is the conflict, is the problem. So, this one sentence contains all these parts. You don't have to write a separate sentence for each one, and you don't have to specifically mention that this is the character, this is the conflict, this is the theme. Just go in the flow. Now, coming towards middle. Here, a series of events or problems occur, leading to an increase in tension. This is also where the characters change and grow as they deal with the conflicts they face. Here, the problem accelerates and it reaches towards the limit from where it starts falling back and you start finding solutions to it. Some of the problems are solved in the middle part while the major is left for the ending. The end. Here, the main conflict is resolved and the loose ends are tied up. Tension falls quickly, and a good ending leaves the readers satisfied. Now, whenever you are writing a story, keep in mind the beginning, the middle, and end. Keeping these points in mind, you can jot down a rough sketch of your story under these headings of beginning, middle, and end. Then when you are writing the story, you don't need to give the headings. You will just go in the flow and you will write them in separate paragraphs, but without any headings in it. Now look at the story structure. Beginning, characters are introduced, setting is introduced, conflict or problem is sometimes introduced. Sometimes the problem is not introduced, sometimes it starts happening in the middle, depending on your story, depending on your pattern of the story. Middle, events happen. Usually the conflict or problem is trying to be solved. You try to solve it in the middle, but it is usually solved completely in the end. Ending, solution is found for problem, character usually changes from the beginning. Means he became more brave or more active or realizes his mistake, something like that. That's the sort of change we are talking about. This pattern of the story, that the problem starts and then how it ends, this is called story arc. It can be imagined as an inverted check mark with tension building to the climax, then quickly decreasing. Now look at the story arc. The story begins from the exposition. Exposition basically means explanation, description. This falls basically under beginning. Background information about the protagonist in the normal life means character in the normal life. We are talking about the character here. Then conflict. Something happens that creates a problem for the character. Then comes the rising action. The sequence of events that happen as a result of the conflict. These usually get more intense over time. Then you reach a climax where the problem is at its highest, the most exciting part of the story or the turning point. Very exciting, or the point from where the story starts changing, means the story starts ending, the problem starts getting solved. Falling action, the events that happen after the climax, and resolution, loose ends tied up, a peek at how things have changed. Now, this is the ending. Looking at this story arc, you might think that this is something very difficult. This is not at your age level or your class level. But no, this is very simple. If you keep this arc in your mind, it's way more easier for you to write the story. Let me give you an example. Keeping this arc in mind, I will tell you a story. Now, let's start from the exposition. That's the beginning. Parents never let me stay home alone, but one night the babysitter cancels and they have to. Everything starts off fine. I am having a great time. Now, here, the little background knowledge is given that the parents never let him alone, but this is the first time this is happening for him. And the character, they basically is a boy. Now he is home alone. Now, in the beginning, he is having a great time. Now, coming to conflict. Here, the problem starts. Here, the conflict starts. I see a frog in the hall. I'm totally afraid of frogs, so I freak out. Means I become very upset. Now, if you see, the exposition and conflict are covered. Now we will go to rising action. What happens after the conflict starts? I hide from it. I try and fail to trap it in a trash can. I try and fail to get it in a bag. Now in the rising action, I'm taking steps to get rid of my conflict, that is a frog. Now we reach the climax. I chase the frog out of the house with a tennis racket. Now I have taken care of my problem. I spend rest now falling action. Focus on falling action. I spend the rest of the night cleaning up my mess. I get into pajamas, watch TV. My parents come home. Happy that things seem okay, my parents plan another outing. Now, this is the coming towards the ending. Resolution. I consider asking to not to be left alone, then realize the frog incident showed me I'm stronger than I thought. So, what was the change in the character? That he became more brave. In fact, he realized that he's braver than he thought of himself. If you see this story, it's a very simple story of a boy who was left alone at home, got scared from a frog, and then got rid of the frog and became more brave. Just but according to the story arc. So it's very simple if you keep this arc in your mind. It will be easier for you to write a story. So keep these things in mind now. And remember, use past tense to write your story and use adjectives in order to make your story interesting and imaginative. Use interesting adjectives to describe the character, the setting, and the events that are taking place. It will make your story more fun to read. Thank you for watching the video. I hope this video will help you in writing a great